jazz drums mean only one thing. Good to see you for the Positive Echo podcast, Gary Coulton in the UK, Carl Munson here in Portugal. How are you, Gary?
I am very, very well. As you well know, I'm on a short break in the lovely seaside town of Lyme Regis in Dorset. And it's known as the Jurassic Coast because it is one of the best places in the world to go fossil hunting. Guess what we did today?
Had fish and chips.
Fossils.
Oh my word. Do you know, it's funny, there's a great resonance because here too is something of a Jurassic Coast here where I live. And I went to see a little bit of a dig just recently. It was fascinating. We've got some great dinosaur footprints here in the rocks. And you've got some great rocks that you can crack open and actually see the what are they called? What are they called? Those little ones.
Okay. Now you've asked me, haven't you?
Someone will tell us. Yeah.
It'll pop into my head any second.
It will. Not an ammonite. Ammonites? No.
Ammonites are the animals that most of them around here, Lyme Regis, and what's called the Jurassic Coast.
Yes.
But the first ever big dinosaur discovered was by Mary Anning.
Yes.
A gigantic ichthyosaur, which she took out intact.
Yeah.
And there's a film about it with was it Kate? No, I forgot her name.
Winslet playing.
Winslet, was it? Played Mary Anning.
Yeah.
So it's a wonderful place to be. It's turned a bit into a Disneyland version of Lyme Regis because there's so many Airbnbs.
Yes.
Now it's September at night time. Most of the lights are off in all the houses behind the main drag. So it's a
beautiful place.
It's a beautiful place, but it just seems to have lost its soul a bit.
Oh dear. Okay. All right. Right.
Anyway,
well, maybe we'll have the mayor of Lyme Regis on one day, and we'll see what we can do. But talking of Kate's, we have a very special guest today talking about putting poetry in business. How did you find Kate for us, Gary?
I found Kate purely by chance through LinkedIn for two reasons. Both of us are neurodivergent, and I love her attitude to what that is like. She's incredibly supportive to other people who are neurodivergent. And then I discovered she was a poet, and I had recently started thinking about writing poetry. And then there was this thing of poetry in business. The two things don't seem to go together because business is mostly head-driven, and poetry is incredibly emotional. So where did this come from? And then she found out I was publishing my book, my memoir, and she very, very graciously helped me launch it online. And the rest of that is history, as they say.
Well,
so I have a lot to owe her.
Then let's welcome her onto the screen. Everybody, it's Kate Jenkinson joining us now. And let's do it like this. So we've got you right center stage there, Kate. Lovely to meet you. Thank you so much for being here.
It's a pleasure. It really is. Thank you for inviting me.
So, Kate, I think we're probably going to cover quite a few different things, but poetry seems to be the core of what we're likely to talk about. And as with all of our guests, I asked them to send me some questions, and you very kindly did that. And the one that I'd like to launch with is, where does your passion for poetry come from?
So, poetry, you were talking a bit about soul earlier, weren't you? Poetry is my soul speaking, is how I would describe it. And I'd also say that I was introduced to it when I was very young. I was introduced to it through my grandpa and my mum, who's a poet as well. So poetry for me always felt like something positive in my life. And my grandpa passed away when I was 5. But what he left behind was an enduring love for storytelling and poetry, rhythms and rhymes. He taught me the first poem I learnt to recite. And I just feel very happy when I am in the realms of poetry, and it's such a vast area that I could tell you so many different points of passion that have come up as a result of being just introduced to it from a young age and always seeing it as a positive thing. But I think that's where it comes from.
Mm.
And it's always stayed with me during the working world as a way to reclaim my well-being. So when I was
Mm.
feeling burnt out or needed to get some perspective or get distance from being buried in the detail and buried in the busyness of work, poetry was a way to reclaim who I am, how I show up, and remind me what I believe in.
How
Mm.
lovely. And so
Mm.
that's available for others as well to emulate and to be
Absolutely.
shown. Wonderful.
I
Wonderful.
I want to help people rebuild their relationship with poetry because I think if you ask a lot of people, they will say something like, "Yeah, I don't like it. We had to do it in school, didn't understand it. You know, we had to think about what the poet was thinking. How can I know what they were thinking? They're long dead. You know, I'm not even interested in them." And it's that kind of fairly practical, tactical, and it's really not what poetry's about.
No.
It's
Um,
a fair comment though, isn't it? Because I was looking
yeah,
up, I wrote an article in a paper here in Portugal for the Portugal resident, and it was called to Portugal or not to Portugal. So you know where I'm going with that.
yeah, I do.
And I was looking up Shakespeare and Shakespeare's contribution to the sort of aphorisms and the everyday phrases and words. And it's the same thing, isn't it? It's, oh, no, I don't like Shakespeare. Or people have had a bad experience. And so
Yeah.
it's so important that someone and people like you are flying the flag and saying, okay. And I find this with, I'm sorry, it's a strange tangent, but I find this with jazz music. There's that
Yeah.
instant, no, don't like jazz.
Yeah.
Whereas people have had either a strange experience or have an idea about it, which
Mm.
prevents them from feeling the soul and the magic of these things we're talking about.
That's a
Mm.
really good observation, Carl. There are a few kind of like taboo subjects or subjects that we all
Yes.
bond on our hate or disliking of it, and
Yeah.
yet we've not actually experienced it in the current form. Or I always say to people, if you don't like poetry, you haven't found your poetry yet because there's so many different types. Uh,
Yes.
Same
Yes.
with jazz, I guess.
Same with jazz. Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. Fantastic.
So the point of the podcast is positive echo,
Yeah.
and I know you're in a pretty good place now with what you're doing. That's the impression I get from reading your writing.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think it's only fair to our viewers to know how you got to be in this place, and
Mm.
how poetry played its role in going from, you mentioned burnout. You know,
Mm.
where was it you were working when you got burnout? I think that's
Yeah.
quite important.
Mm.
Right. So, how did I reconnect with poetry? So,
Mm.
I was 25 years an HR leader and director, and the sole breadwinner for my family. My husband was the stay-at-home partner, looked after the kids. So, I think I was about mid-30s when I had my first period of burnout, and it coincided with being asked to leave my first HR director role, and I didn't know why. And I was very, I do know why now, Gary. It's neurodiversity is the underlying thread, and that happened more than once in my career. And poetry workshops were my way to process what had happened because, the first time I was asked to leave, I felt betrayed. I'd been promoted by the person that asked me to leave the role, and he didn't ask me himself. He had his next in command come and tell me this. So it was really handled very badly.
Mm.
And as an HR professional, I know the way it should have been done, but equally, I knew that to leave with my self-esteem and integrity and dignity intact, the best way was to just follow the process and consider what that meant to me. So I used all the services that were available to me, the employee assistance program, the outplacement support. And when I went to the EAP, I got a counsellor and she said to me, I want you to write on this flip chart sized piece of paper all the things you enjoy. And I sat there and thought, well, what do you mean the things I enjoy? I don't have time to enjoy anything. I
Yeah.
just work and then I'm not appreciated and I go home and I'm
Oh,
too tired. So when I realized I couldn't put anything on that paper, I was mortified actually. So I went home and I thought, no, I'm going to find the things, reclaim the things I enjoy. And I wrote them all down. Things like badminton, which I love doing,
Mm.
things like going to the theatre, and I wrote down poetry. And what was significant to me was that I wrote it down twice. It was like I was
Mm.
missing it that much. It was calling me, and I thought, well, what is it about poetry that is calling me? And I've been answering that question ever since, because it just keeps opening up new possibilities. And I realize it's because, like I say, it's my soul speaking to me. It's a connection to who I am. And when you're neurodivergent, you become so alienated from yourself over time, trying to please other people, trying to fit in. And I was an HR director, and I was promoting this, we need to fit in. This is what good looks like, and not actually feeling that myself. Or in some places, I'd go to organizations that were brilliant. I'd join, I'd say I was a breath of fresh air, that everything I did was positive, and then I'd burn out. Well, I wouldn't burn out. I'd get really bored. It's the same as
Yeah.
burnout. I
Yeah.
got really, I'd solved all the problems. It's like, well, what now?
Wow.
And at one point, I went in to see one of my managers, and I said that I need some inspiration. And he knew I liked poetry, because in my interview for that job, he said, "What's the thing you're most proud of?" And I'd won the Manchester Literature Poetry Slam. I'd kind of put myself in for it and
Ooh.
won it. I said, "I'm really proud of winning the poetry slam, blah, blah." And I'd gone into his office year and a half into this new job, said, "I'm really bored." And he said, "Times like this, Kate," he said, "I read this poem." And I thought to myself, yeah, I bet you do. But actually, I think he does. I think he did. And the
Mm.
poem was Rudyard Kipling's If.
Yeah.
It's very powerful.
Yeah.
Gets everyone, doesn't it?
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm. Okay, so I don't want to pull you through any more of the dark times, but I think it was important
Okay.
to know in these podcasts that life's not fair. Nature's
No.
not fair. But some people have the odds stacked against them, and it's not only neurodivergent people. It can be women in a very male-dominated world, etc.
Yeah.
But it's the travel, the journey, and giving people hope, giving them new ways of thinking, behaving, being, so that they can bring the best of themselves to their day, not anybody
Yeah.
else's, but their day.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to get hold of I know what poetry is now doing for me, but it's not my interview. When you wake up in the morning,
Yeah.
how soon are you thinking about writing the next poem?
So I don't think about poetry as writing poems. I think about it as processing what I'm feeling. So if
Mm-hmm.
I'm getting overwhelmed and I can't understand what's going on for me, I know what I need to do is write, just stream of consciousness writing
Yeah.
what is happening for me. And whenever I write, Gary, it's poetic. When I say it's poetic, I mean it has a rhythm to it, it
Yeah.
has a rhyme to it. So here's something I've learned about my neurodiversity. I think in poetry. So this is why I say I don't think about it being a poem, because that's actually the way I think. And then because I'm a scientist by training as well, Gary and I have got this in common. Um, I trained to be I was a research scientist, and I identified new species of ferns and stuff like that before I
Did
found
you?
all. Yes, it did.
Wow.
Yes, another
So
divergent with an interesting past.
yeah,
Yeah.
I know that's a whole different story. But what I learned recently, the neuroscience of creativity, is that we have the logical side to our brain and the
Mm-hmm.
poetic side to our brain. People will call it our creative side, but actually, neuroscientists call it poetic side because it's where we make meaning. It's where rhythm and metaphor and pattern
Mm-hmm.
recognition exist, and all of those things are poetic. So,
Mm.
poetry isn't something that is an academic subject with no purpose. It is actually our humanity. And this is why it needs to be central in any training or curriculum, because it's the way that our brain develops.
Yeah.
So, reading, writing, and listening to poetry helps our brains make connections. It helps us make meaning. So, if we stop connecting with poetry in some way, we stop developing our brains.
Mm.
And so, I just think that poetry is how we think. It's definitely how I think, and it joins the two parts of our thinking, our rational and our creative mind.
It's funny you mentioned metaphor, because when I was teaching medical students the science of background of medicine,
Yeah.
I was known for making multiple metaphors during a lecture,
Yes.
trying to bring the science into an everyday experience that they would have. Can you make it
Yes.
relevant? And I'd never realized that that was part of the, the deal, the neurodivergent deal.
It's part of the neurodivergent deal. It's also central to poetry, is being, using a metaphor. I call it tangibilizing. I don't know if I've made that word up, but I'm happy
Cool.
to have. So I found that in HR, managers couldn't understand. I was being kind, and I didn't think they wanted to deliberately be cruel and hurt people, because who would want to do that?
Yeah.
I think they just didn't know how to put themselves in other people's shoes.
Right.
And I found that if I could give them a metaphor, if I could sort of find something that they had a passion or interest in and turn it into a metaphor, then they had more empathy and understanding of the other person. That is poetic. That
Yes.
is leadership. I think we've just lost the connection to what poetry was 150 years ago. Scientists were poets, it didn't have that distinction. It wasn't in a curriculum box. It wasn't downgraded relative to the maths and sciences. Everything was education of the whole brain. And so I think managers, when they understand how things make people feel, are more inclined to be human centric in their approaches. So, as a poet in HR, I often found myself using poetry to try and illustrate how something felt for somebody else.
Yeah.
I'd write things or share poems I'd read or use a metaphor. Or if that didn't work, I'd threaten the law.
Yeah, right. Poetry first and then the law, right?
Yeah.
I'd try all the human stuff first,
Yeah.
and then I'd go, really can't do that because it's breaking the law. And if
And you
you'll
know
get a
what that means.
fine,
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. Wow,
yeah.
fantastic.
So you're one of those people that doesn't bridge places so much as makes them merge.
Yeah.
I'm sure the people that watch this will be going, where does poetry fit into today's business? Because
Oh,
business is, very intellectual, and it's all gut driven. Not much heart in it. And to me, poetry, if it doesn't engage my emotion and my heart, my compassion in some way,
mm,
it's missing the point. So how do you, because I know you're active in this,
yeah,
how
very.
do you bring poetry to hard-bitten business people and get them get
Yeah.
them to see that there's a benefit?
Okay.
Can I just add something to that? We're sort of dramatizing this scenario, aren't we, of a boardroom of people who've been told that Kate is coming to visit them.
Mm.
And they're sat there, aren't they? Like, they've got the croissants and the coffee are on
Mm.
the table, and Kate's maybe stuck in traffic, and she's arriving. Busy UK situation, and they're all waiting in the boardroom. Like, who organised this? HR did. They think we need to do poetry, and in she comes. What happens next?
Well, so this scenario is an interesting one, and
Right.
often what people will say is that I'm helping them with their creativity and innovation.
Yeah.
So we don't lead with the poetry. I used to do that and get very angry and frustrated that people couldn't see the connection. And then I
Hmm.
thought, that's not fair. There's reasons why people don't connect this. But equally, when we describe somebody who's at the peak performance, at the top of their game, we call it poetic,
Yes. Poetry
don't
in
we?
motion. Poetry in
Mm.
Exactly.
motion. Yes.
Exactly. So for me, we know poetry when we see it.
Yeah.
And poetry is in business. When you see a marketing professional who has nailed the messaging for that product launch, that is literally poetic because they will have used words. When you see the finance director balance the principles of literally the profit and loss, and still engage the talent in his team to make that happen. That is poetic. It's when the two sides come together, the logic and the emotion, and it creates something bigger and more meaningful. We know it when we feel it and when we see it.
Yeah.
And the irony is, we think it's a poem on a page. It isn't.
No, it's the poetry inside each person.
It is.
One inviting the others to engage with that poetry.
Yeah.
And I've often said that when we buy something, for example, or we apply for a job or a promotion, whatever it is, we have to fall in love with it a little bit.
Yes.
And if the language, even if it's prose and not formal poetry, if the language engages you so that you can fall in love with that thing, that organization, that person, just a little bit, platonically, of course, that's powerful.
Yeah.
And something that occurred to me the other day, I write what I hear in my head, which I guess is poetic. I've been often told as a scientist, your language is far too flowery to be a scientist. You know, be more.
Yeah, Gary.
So things like posts on Substack or LinkedIn, I do a lot during the day, and I've realised it's my intellectual stimming.
Yes.
I've got stims, as you can see, but I've got intellectual stims. When I started writing poetry a year ago, I realised that was my emotional stimming. What do you think about
that? Really fascinating. I think for me, is it stimming? I think for me, it's when I've become emotionally dysregulated. It's my way of getting my regulation. So that's what stimming is. It's a soothing of how you're feeling when you are overwhelmed. And yes, I'd say it helps me assimilate the overwhelm of emotions that I get. So yeah, definitely could be considered. I think knitting is also stimming. I do a lot of knitting.
I realised my mother, very late in life, was autistic.
Yeah.
And she was a professional knitter, and she would sit and knit while she was holding a conversation or reading a book or watching television, non-stop. And she didn't need, once she'd read the pattern, she didn't need to read it ever again.
That's incredible. It is stimming, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
I wanted to share a little poem with you that I put on my business card.
I was going to ask you, we need a poem.
It's only a little poem.
Yeah, I was wondering, is it a little poem or a big business card? It's a little.
All my business cards are bookmarks, something useful.
Very nice. Very nice.
It goes with the brand and the fact to love books, as you know.
Yeah.
So you don't see poetry in business, so it doesn't exist, yet it does. Poetry is truth. When you seek the one truth, the beauty of a perfect ratio, the joy of the win-win scenario, the plan that everyone wants to follow, it was a poetic way of thinking that made it so.
Beautiful. Thank you very much indeed.
It's that rhythm. It goes places that if you'd have read that as prose, but it feels like you're being sold something when it's in prose.
Yeah.
When you hear the rhythm of poetry, it bypasses all of that bullshit filter and just goes straight to it.
Nailed it, Gary. You've nailed it. It absolutely is like lyrics of a song. It goes to the emotional heart of the matter, and it speaks to a different part of our biochemistry, our neurobiology, call it what you will. It bypasses that cognitive filter. And
thank God.
Yes, thank God. We need more poetry.
Well,
We need.
I want to make mention of this, if I may. And it occurred to me there must be some sort of neuroscientific basis for how that cuts through the rational. I mean, what you just did is extraordinarily different to the rest of the conversation, isn't it? It took it up a level.
Mhm.
the communication. The communication was changed by the way you put that, and we're using the word poetry to describe that process, aren't we?
Yeah.
And it's very interesting what you were saying before, like how poetry might actually be a verb rather than a noun. It's not really a concept, is it? It's a way of being. And
Yes.
something happened. Do you think it is the process of industrialization and rationalization that knocked out our inner poet or covered it up? What
So
went on? What went on
what went
historically?
wrong?
What went wrong?
Well,
Yeah,
what
yeah.
went wrong? We decided that people were machines. We
Yes. Yes.
decided that people could go
Mhm.
constantly non-stop. We
Yes.
forgot that we need to take a pause and a breath, that we need time to re-energize, that we need time to process what's happening to us. It
Mm,
isn't about continuous efficiency and productivity and
mm,
performance. Sports people need to regain, their muscles need to
Mm.
get rest in between matches. We know it in some places, but we forget it in business. We forget that in business, people need, I call it a poetic pause. They need time to stop and reflect. And
yeah.
poetry can do that for people. And exactly as you said, if we bring it in with that kind of language and that um, rhythm that we learned when we were younger, the sort of joy of reading, I don't know, a hearing a lullaby or something that soothes us, it
Yeah.
takes us back to feeling safe. Poetry makes us feel safe.
Yeah, and we've propagandized ourselves out of it, haven't we? It's like I haven't. It's one of those things that I haven't got time to do, and
Yeah.
that's a crime against ourselves, isn't it? Like people thinking, haven't got time to read, haven't got time to go for a walk, haven't got time to meditate.
And
It's in
this is,
that same realm, isn't it, of activity, which is
well, it's
beneficial.
an excuse, Carl, isn't it? Because
Yeah,
I'm at this, it's total excuse because I know I can write a poem. I've literally written 2 poems today, 2 haikus, and it took me 5 minutes.
Mm.
It took me 5 minutes to write them. It
yes,
took me 2 days to muse on the importance of them.
beautiful. Yeah,
So,
It made me think about the other thing is poems are memorable.
yes, they are.
Pro- There aren't many people who can read a book and then quote from memory. There are a few, but they're not many. But I would hazard a guess that there are quite a few people who could at least uh, quote one poem, even if it's a limerick.
Yeah.
And the power of poetry hit me when I was doing genealogical surveys of my family. And shorten the very, very long story. My wife's family, if you go several skips through the maternal line, go to uh, Richard, Duke of Normandy, in other words, William the Conqueror's father,
Mm,
by William the Conqueror's sister. Then there's a reason why they were called Normans. It's because they came from Scandinavia. So you're able now to go back and back and back through the kings and queens of Scandinavia to about 500 AD, but there are no written records. They were all verbal. It would be
yeah.
the bard in the big hall of the
Yeah.
evening would recite the royal lineage, but everybody else knew it as well.
Mm,
Because if he got one word wrong, or she, usually a he, there'd be a hullabaloo.
uproar. Yeah,
And that
yeah,
was the power of poetry to hold the culture of a nation.
exactly.
Yeah.
It it it's the way our it is the way we have evolved when we've developed language. I don't know how much of this is true, but I've done a lot of reading around the neurodiversity. Art came from some of the different neurodivergent imaginations that
Mhm.
existed. So, like there's some belief that the paintings of the animals on the caves in I think it's Lascaux
Mhm.
were autistic artists because they could appreciate and remember the dimensions. They must have hyperphantasic memories, i.e., they could see the images after the animals are gone and and how it should, appear.
Yeah.
So it's that different perception way to hold information, and poets hold, like you say, the words and the rhythm and the emotions differently. So yeah, I think there's a tendency to overlook the fact that this is our human evolution, and it's the way that we've evolved, and it's language that if we don't pay attention to, our humanity will degrade, and it has probably degraded because we
Oh,
haven't
it has.
really.
Absolutely. I got an
Yeah,
image there when you were talking. That isn't that amazing? You know, because that's what's happened, isn't it, in this sort of othering and differentiation of people with this same rationalization process, industrialization process, norming and efficiency.
mm,
A lot of people have fallen the wrong side of that. And I
yes,
got this image of where we are now. And I wanted to ask you this, Kate, and you know, to re-emphasize the importance of the arts and poetry at the moment. But it's like, this whole bandwidth is closing so narrowly
mm,
of what works and what is right. And we know it doesn't because it's like the results aren't very good anymore. And it's just almost like we're pulling the last poets through that closing gap and say, you've got to come with us because we need you now in a way we never realized we knew before. And I was saying, I think it was just this lunchtime about, this is the time in our culture. I'm talking about like the Western industrialized world, that phenomenon that's dominated the planet probably for the last 500 years or so. But it's at times like these in the smaller cycle of that big cycle of humanity, and we can see it in sort of Western Europe now, where and because of the politics that's going on, is that we need musicians, artists, and poets to speak up now.
we do.
And that's not to say, it's their fault they didn't speak up before. It's just that we weren't listening before. Well, we had other preoccupations, and it's those people now who are the last ones left to speak about how insane we've become, I think.
It feels a huge burden to be the ones willing to
Yes,
stand up and speak
yes,
the truth. I
yes.
think what I advocate for instead is that we try and incorporate that creativity and make it welcome in our industry, in our enterprise.
Yeah,
Because if it's inside an organization, then we don't lose our way so much. We've got an anchor for our values and for the reason that we're doing things. We kind of keep the focus on it being not just about, it's not an either or mentality. That's the
yes,
business
that's
mentality
rationalization.
is either
Yeah,
or.
yeah,
It's the what if. The poetic mentality is what if, and it's yes and. It's
yes,
like we can have that and we can, and the scientific brain gets it as well. I was talking to
Yeah.
someone earlier. It's like light can be a wave and an element. We
yeah,
can have both. Both these things can be true in the
yes,
same place. But what we've done is we've rationalized enterprise. Well, it's not enterprise anymore. It's because we've lost the creativity. So it's just purely production. We've created productive environments that are efficient, but for who? It
yeah,
can
right.
only be for the end stakeholders, for the for
Mhm.
the profit. It's not really seen, and I coach senior leaders. It's not helping senior leaders either. So we
No.
need to reinvent the way that we do enterprise. Um,
So can
and
we
it
say
need
more about that, about how you're going about doing that?
Well, poetry in business is one way to do it. It's about being able to express how we feel and to reinvent some of the processes that don't work, like performance management that uses norms to distribute people. It's a false way. It doesn't work. We're not mathematically norm. We don't distribute normally. So it's wrong to put talent on that kind of spectrum. The
Mm,
better way to manage people is this constant um, focus on what people can contribute and how they contribute,
yeah,
and a dialogue and a discussion. So I actually think the neuro inclusive agenda is a way to make our organizations better for all of us.
Yes.
If you listen to Ludmila Praslova, she talks about
Mhm.
the canary in the coal mine. That's a
yeah.
fabulous metaphor
Isn't it just?
for how really organizations have become toxic, and it's the neurodivergent people, the creatives, who feel it first.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Those who are connected to, who have deeper emotional responses to things, who get emotionally dysregulated. It's not the fault of the person, it's the environment that they're in that is dysregulating to them. So I
yes,
actually think there's so much we can learn from the neuro inclusion um, movement. And I think that's how we do it, by
Mm.
accepting the diversity of everybody. And the way she says it is inclusion from the margins, which is kind
Mm.
of how I worked when I was in HR, is listen to the voices on the edges. And if we include them, everybody else will be in benefit as well.
Fantastic.
I was once described, because I worked in big universities, always a misfit. I was described as a benign subversive because I saw the big picture. I saw where the problems lay. I saw where the opportunities lay, but I was continually told to effectively stay in my lane. This is what you're known for. Get more grants, i.e. money, publish more papers, get a reputation. Whereas I could see the whole organization and all of its moving parts. The benign bit comes from, I wanted the organization to succeed above everything else.
Yeah.
But I was accused of subverting the system. So they wanted average, in fact. They didn't want to see where they could get better or stop leaks or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
I think more benign subversives, and they should be encouraged.
Well, I used to go around and meet the people who were labelled as whatever reputation, mavericks, the ones who were awkward. And it's like, actually, these are the people who've got the ideas and the creativity. These are the ones I want to listen to. And I had a phrase in HR which was legitimize the need. So somebody needs to do something differently. How can I, as an HR professional, legitimize that so that it is possible? So I guess I was a creative HR professional. If the process didn't fit, I'd change it. So it wasn't about people fitting the process. It's about, and I learned this from a really good quality manager who said, auditing isn't about going around finding out what people are getting wrong. It's going around finding out what ideas they've got to make things better and changing the process to match that.
Yep.
Kate, so many people might be saying, you know how when people hear about inspiring teachers, I wish I had teachers like that. Other people might today be saying, I wish I had an HR department like that. Are you, as well as taking poetry into to the corporate world, are you influencing how HR is transforming as well?
So actually, yes, I work on many different fronts. So I am a provider and a member of an organisation called Evolving HR. And I don't mind giving a shout out to Kirsty Baggs Morgan because she's brilliant.
Yeah, Kirsty.
We always allow shout outs.
Yeah, shout out for Kirsty. I also am a fellow of the CIPD and I am champion of the Independent Consultants Network because a lot of neurodivergent people like myself end up working for themselves because they can create an environment where they can be successful. In fact, 40% of entrepreneurs are neurodivergent, according to some research I've read recently. And therefore, I find that if we can get the in-house HR professionals to work with the outhouse, not the independent consultants more, then we will get the benefit of both worlds. So yes, I'm doing what I can, Call. I coach HR leaders to engage and retain neurodivergent talent, and in so doing, help HR leaders have a sounding board for how to do things differently.
And there's two situations where that entrepreneurial leadership goes sour. One is when the company grows to a point where the entrepreneur can't control it in their own head anymore. It just becomes too disparate and too many layers, so they get incredibly frustrated. Or when they sell to a bigger company who aren't entrepreneurial.
Yeah.
So all the people in the company were feeding the entrepreneur, and suddenly they've got to feed the big corporate. And I think that's why many businesses, something like 60% of new businesses disappear within 2 years because they either they shouldn't be in business because they aren't any good, or they hit this ceiling and being the neurodivergent actually isn't useful anymore. They should go and make another company.
Yeah.
Make another company. I wanted to change gears a little bit. You're a poet. Okay.
Yes, and I know it.
Yeah, and
Sorry,
hey,
just had
and
to
we all
say it.
know it now. If there are people watching who go, well, how do I start being a poet? I'm interested in, can you sit at a computer or with a notepad in a empty room and write poetry? Or do you need to go out into the world and write poetry as an observational thing? Or is it all of the above?
I think it's all of the above, because it depends what kind of whatever you're moved by. So poetry is about movement, which is why it's so useful in organizations. It's about transformation. So you'll notice poetry, you'll notice it when you feel this intense emotion of some kind. It's why we tend to see it at funerals, and we tend to see it at weddings,
Yeah.
and we tend to sort of write it when we're in our teenage years, because there's this intensity to it.
Yeah.
Yes, we do. I know I did.
Me too.
So it's there, and I think everyone's got the potential to convert that intensity of emotion into some words that have meaning for them. Now, I think everyone's the potential to be a poet. I think everybody's got the potential to be creative. I think the two are intertwined. I think what we do is we learn through education and through our institutions that it's shameful to be creative, and that there's only
Yeah.
one answer, and
Program.
that you can't be a poet unless you win an award or a prize. That's wrong. That we've been sold a lie, and as a result, as a result of that lie, the market for poetry and business has not been allowed to form properly. So there's a whole market sector that should exist for poetry and business, like there's a whole market sector for photography in business. Nobody would argue with that. There's a whole market sector for beginning to emerge artists who do doodle art at events. Poets do exactly the same thing as photographers do with images. We do it with words and emotions. There's a
Yeah.
place for us everywhere.
And it is more. Sorry, Gary, but I just wanted to add something there, because it is more prevalent. Going back to the jazz metaphor, there's much more poetry around us, and we connect more with it than we would ever realize or acknowledge as well, right? Because I'm just remembering all the, you said it, at weddings. We had a wonderful a friend of ours, a British poet called Matt Harvey, came along to our wedding, and he was known in cabaret for doing poetry,
Yeah.
and he would do these collaborative poems where everybody would contribute, and then he would disappear and he'd tape it all together and read it out. And he did that for our wedding, and it was fantastic. So everybody who came to my wedding with Louisa, we've got it on our wall. They contributed to a great
Exactly.
big poem in a way that made everybody a poet that day.
Now imagine, Carl, that you do that at an next corporate event.
Yes.
How connected and
Yes.
energized would those people feel?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Having said,
Powerful.
"Oh, I can't do this," as well, probably is their first reaction, right?
Exactly, it would be, yeah.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
usually is. And I don't let that stop me, because
No,
I go,
I'm
No.
no,
pleased.
I
I'm pleased.
understand you can't do it. That's fine. All we're going to do is, and I just take them through the slowly, step by step, break it down really gently, and then they surprise themselves and they end
Yeah.
up writing the first poem that they've written since school or
Yeah,
something.
beautiful, beautiful, and that's what you're asking, Gary. Right? I think in a way, isn't
Yeah.
it?
I mean, it's. I think we're all wiser than we're ever led to believe.
Oh yeah.
One, that's gaslit away from us.
Yeah.
Yes.
We're more creative naturally than we ever believe.
Yeah.
And it can be expressed in many different ways, but we're programmed to believe that only very special people can be creative. Not you. You've got to get on and do, as you say, this boring job. So it's about what's the gateway drug to being a poet. And I think I can explain what I mean, because the first poetry I wrote it came from my memoir. Yeah. And this isn't about me, but it was very, very personal. And I think it takes a certain kind of person to be very, very personal. So I thought, I'll do something more light-hearted. And I sat in my office blank, completely blank, because the environment wasn't conducive to uplifting stuff. So I took myself out on a walk down the towpath of the River Thames, and I had my phone on notes, and I looked at things, and then just wrote whatever came in my mind as short as possible. Didn't bother about grammar or spelling, and then moved on to the next thing. It was blackberries, it was a grey heron, and then I sat having a coffee and put it all into some kind of order, and then put it into decent language. Boom.
That's it.
It was a homage to autumn. Done.
Yeah. That is the process. It's noticing. And
Yeah.
we are so hooked on the dopamine we get from the scrolling that we forget that there's a natural source of it around us.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
nature is a really good source of inspiration. So yeah, it's beautiful.
And also,
I don't write depressing stuff.
Yeah, I do as well.
to be a bit of a, use a hippie cliche, it's about the process as well, isn't it? Because it does seem as well that, like everything else, it's become commoditized, so that the poetry is the end result and not the process.
Exactly.
And what was beautiful about what Gary just shared there as something anyone could do, and that's not to belittle what you did, Gary, but this is a universal experience,
Oh,
isn't it? Of like
absolutely.
going out and looking at things, and like you say, Kate, noticing them. That's mindfulness.
Yeah.
And that in itself intrinsically is a beautiful thing, arguably of equal value, if not more, than trying to bust the gut to write a set of stanzas down that might stand a chance of winning a prize or getting published. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but it's all about that last bit now, isn't it? For everything in our lives.
Well, I get a bit frustrated that we have actually turned poetry into a competition, and I think
Yes.
poetry is collaborative.
Yeah.
But we kind of value it when there's an elite kind of goal to be achieved, and we've almost put business into poetry, and I want it to be the other way round. I want
Yes.
poetry in business, which is the beauty, the truth, and the connection.
Oh, yes. Yes, yes, yes. Oh, how beautiful.
I'm a natural, I'm an extrovertible introvert, I would say. I can be an extrovert and
I've
public
noticed.
speaking, but I'm a natural introvert, and I kind of go towards darker issues if I'm in the mood. What I found when I did the exercise of what I'm now calling plein air poetry, a bit like plein air painting, my mood just went up through the roof.
Yeah.
I don't want to analyze it. What I want to say is it relieved quite a bit of intense pressure I'd put myself under.
Yeah.
If we come back to business, how many days off sick do people have because they're stressed by the environment? So writing poetry of whatever quality is irrelevant.
It is
It's a great
irrelevant.
so it has a commercial value as well.
It's therapeutic. I run poetry and business conference. I created it last year for the first time, and the keynote speaker was Claire Morgan, talking about what poetry brings to business. This year, the keynote speaker is Lauren Ducray, and she ran wellbeing workshops in Google during the pandemic, and she knew it was of value, but I think they were overwhelmed with how many people signed up for these workshops. I think it was something like 600 people went through them because of the therapeutic benefits of sitting, listening to, reading, writing poetry. And it wasn't about, as you say, achieving an outcome, a standard, or winning prizes. It was about the process that it took you through. Yeah.
Because I think there's an element of meditation.
Yeah.
When you've given yourself time, place, and permission to step off the treadmill.
Yeah.
So it's a form of it's almost like prayer to write poetry.
And it depends on the subject matter, but playfulness. I like the playful element of it.
Yeah.
So I love my word play. I love kind of double meaning. Sometimes. I did do stand-up comedy for a while and then realised I say I did it. I studied it and I went on a course and I did 2 gigs and went, I think I'd rather do performance poetry. That was terrifying. So yeah, there is that element to it.
Wonderful, wonderful. I need to ask you, Kate, that poem that the first one you learnt, inspired by your grandfather, that
Yeah.
you first committed to memory. What was that?
Do you want me to tell it? You want me to?
Lovely,
Oh,
lovely
yeah, why
to hear
not?
that. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Because I recited it and I can remember it now. So,
Mhm.
when to the flowers so beautiful, the father gave a name. Back came a little blue-eyed one, all timidly it came, and standing at its father's feet and gazing at his face, it said in low and trembling tones, and with a modest grace, "Dear God, the name thou gavest me, alas, I have forgot." Kindly the father looked him down and said, "Forget me not."
Wonderful. And
Mm.
that you learnt that at 5 years of age?
I must have done because I performed
Wow.
it at the Sunday school, and he died when I was 6. So yeah, I learnt it when I was very young, and
Amazing.
yeah, I'll never forget it. I taught it to my children. The forget me not has a very symbolic meaning.
Mhm.
My mother-in-law has Alzheimer's. It's the flower for the Alzheimer's Society. I'm a
Okay.
botanist. I've never forgotten my grandfather. There's a lot of meaning held in that.
Yeah, yeah, feeling
Okay.
that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's amazing. And that's your grandfather's positive echo, isn't it? I mean, to come back to the what we're
Absolutely.
talking about and how beautifully poetry lends itself to the positive echo. Because as you were saying, Gary,
Mm.
prose is one thing, isn't it? CVs are and epitaphs and things like that. But words that echo through it,
Mm.
I'm going all Russell Crowe now, but words that echo through eternity are poet. That is what poetry can
Yeah.
do, and often is.
Mm.
It's timeless. It's a timeless echo, isn't it? It was
Well,
written hundreds of years ago, and here it is now, as if for the first time. To
Mm.
quote T.S. Eliot, right? Yeah.
well, I look at it. If you ask people about their favorite poets, a lot of them will say it's the poets of the First World War.
Mm,
So nobody has got a direct connection. I can't remember if there's any living people that fought through it, but we seem to be able to process really bad things via poetry and make sense of it.
yeah.
Not an explanation, but a kind of sense.
Yeah.
So it can be wonderfully uplifting. I mean, I wrote a short poem called Eric the Dogfish, which I love, but not many other people do. And yet at the other extreme, we have the, the war poets. And
Mm,
there aren't many other things. Yes, there are films, but they never quite capture that thing. So I'm going to say that I think getting poetry into business, which it can be, the businesses can be really harsh, they can be inhuman. Poetry can be an answer to at least part of that issue. But you've got to capture the people right at the top to make it relevant to them, which is a thought that Carl and I have been having. So we'll
mm.
be back to you with maybe with an idea.
Oh, okay.
I've got a little phrase here as well that what came to me when you were talking earlier, Kate, is the corporate world is about doing things to people to move them,
Mm.
as in get the job done, and you're moving people to do things.
Yeah.
That's a different orientation altogether,
Mm.
isn't it?
Oh, it is, and I think that's so important that you've uh, thought about it that way, because poetry is about being before doing,
Yeah.
bonding before competing. We've
Yes.
we've kind of totally lost the fact that being human first
Yes.
enables us to be better at the performance later. So it's the logo for my business is a diamond. It's deliberate. It's the divergent thinking first and then the convergent thinking. And
Ooh.
the problem with education is it teaches us to converge and use our critical thinking before we've used our expansive possibility thinking. So you
Yeah.
start with what if, and then you go down to options. You don't start with
Mm.
options and then we just have lost the ability to appreciate what creative thinking does for us. But we're going to need to get it back because
Yeah.
AI is going to do all the other stuff for us.
Well,
Because
Yeah.
Yes, that's a lovely, lovely reframe of AI because it could do all the heavy lifting that we've thought was so important in the last 100 years. We could dispatch that to AI and become creative and spontaneous again, could we
We
not?
could.
Mm.
We could. And I think the last thing we want to do with AI, although people are using it to write poetry, is have it write our poetry for us.
Yeah.
Because it can't live our lives for us. It's about us finding our center, what makes us human, and what's important. And poetry helps you do that.
Yes.
I think we
Yes.
should probably leave it with that thought.
Thank you so much, Kate
Mhm.
Jenkinson, for being
Thank you.
here. Thank you
Yeah.
very much indeed. Wonderful to talk to you. We have a little bit of a sort of sorbet at the end, don't we, Gary? Where
Mm.
you found a little bit of
Just palate cleaner,
no, I don't know if that's the best. Sorry, might not have been the best metaphor, but it's a little.
No, there
Yeah,
you go.
yeah. But this is
Something
something
really.
you found, Gary. What have we
Yeah.
got this week?
You've got the link in the WhatsApp. I came
Actually,
across.
it's great wordplay. You might appreciate this. Do you know there are sometimes you see a news item and you think they've written that article just because they had a good headline. This is positive grains. I mean, sorry, capital grains. Capital grains. Isn't that a
Oh,
great? Super.
So
like it.
the idea of this is guy who takes wood from trees in London that have been cut down because they're dying and so on, and rather than just burn them or chip them, he converts them into furniture,
Mm,
and he gives the wood to other people who are great furniture people, and he's developing his business. And I just thought the idea of a tree getting a second life.
mm,
Mm.
And then it got me to thinking of my own village, where at least 3 specimen trees have been cut down recently.
mm,
They cut them to about 2 feet off the ground.
Oh dear.
So just leave this stump that then sprouts.
mm,
I'm going to talk to the local authority and say, why don't you keep them 10 feet, 15 feet of the trunk, and then get a chainsaw artist to make a sculpture?
Yeah.
mm,
So again, it's like the second life of a tree that otherwise would just become chippings.
mm,
I thought it was upbeat, somebody who's thought outside the box, benign, subversive, if you like. I'm
mm.
not going to accept the run of the mill, and it's a form of art. He creates this amazing furniture out of dead trees, and that's it. That's
Gary, did you do that on purpose? Run of the mill when you were talking about trees?
of course.
Yeah. Yeah. Finely crafted podcast. This is.
I
Oh,
went to a mill today in Lyme Regis. It's one of the oldest water-driven flour mills left in England. It was there before the Doomsday Book, which is 1090,
wow.
and it's still running. And I bought a bag of beautiful spelt flour, which I'm going to get a friend to bake a loaf of bread out of.
Do they have a sourdough from the same time as well? Some people have, you know. When you
Possibly, but they grind flour all day, every day.
beautiful, beautiful. Kate, thank you so much for being here.
Yes, thank you, Kate.
And just so opening that, letting the light in. And I think that's what you did today for me for sure. You let the light in
Thank
for
you.
poetry, and wish you all the best with your upcoming. When is that conference or
Conference.
event happening? Yeah.
Yes, so the Poetry and Business Conference is on the 14th of November and it's online. A few hybrid venues are hosting little intimate in-person venues as well.
What good idea.
So yeah, I do try and be creative with the way I do things. And
Mhm.
it's like I say, it's 14th of November, starts at 10 and finishes at 10 because we have an open mic in the evening for poets who want to come along and share poetry about business.
What a day that'll be then. That's fantastic. And I'm sure if anybody looks up Kate Jenkinson and poetry as a search, they'll find you and they'll be able to find that as well, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
poetry and business, I tend to come up as one of the few people doing this, although there are a number of us across the globe actually. So not
Wonderful
alone.
network. Wonderful. Well, all the best to you in the wonderful work you're doing. And
Thank
thanks
you.
for being with us on the Positive Echo podcast. We'll see you again in 2 weeks' time. Cheers, Gary, as well. Bye, Kate. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
And
Bye.
Bye.
we look forward to speaking to you again in the future. Ciao, ciao.